Hello, my name is Danica Globakar, and I'm the Senior Stormwater Program Manager at the City of Sammamish. In a previous stormwater educational video, I discussed stormwater runoff, how uncontrolled runoff negatively impacts watersheds and creeks, and I introduced some of the requirements we have to control runoff and reduce erosion, flooding, and pollutants. In this video, we'll use that knowledge as a jumping-off point to discuss stormwater regulations in Sammamish and what development projects must do to control their stormwater. The key points I hope you understand after this video are where stormwater rules originate and how Sammamish has adopted and implements the rules. I'll discuss drainage review, the core requirements, and adjustments and exemptions. A strong grasp of these concepts will help Council make future stormwater policy decisions. Regulation of stormwater originates at the national level. The federal government's Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, passed the Clean Water Act in 1972 to regulate pollutants entering surface waters of the United States, such as rivers, lakes, and streams. The Clean Water Act created the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES, permit program, which enacts rules or regulations to control discharge of pollutants to surface water. The EPA authorizes states to manage the NPDES permit program. Washington State's Department of Ecology manages the NPDES permit program within the state. Ecology issues NPDES permits to municipalities like Sammamish. Sammamish holds an NPDES permit issued by the Department of Ecology. The intent of the permit is to help cities manage and control stormwater runoff and reduce pollutants entering our surface water. The city complies with our permit by incorporating specific components into our stormwater program. Some examples of these components are mapping our stormwater pipes and catch basins, inspecting and maintaining our stormwater ponds and vaults, and enforcing stormwater rules on new development. There are several other components of the permit, but for the sake of brevity, I've only shown 3 here. The focus of today's video is on a specific NPDES program component, setting stormwater rules on new development. The NPDES permit program requires that cities adopt a stormwater manual, which sets stormwater rules for new development. I'll briefly touch upon some of the ordinances and code Sammamish has adopted related to stormwater. In 2016, City Council adopted the 2016 King County Surface Water Design Manual and Sammamish Addendum. By adopting and following the 2016 manual, the city remains in compliance with our NPDES permit. Sammamish Municipal Code, SMC Title 13, is our stormwater code. Title 13 defines the 2016 King County Manual and Addendum together as our Surface Water Design Manual. SMC Titles 21A and 21B, the city's development code, specify that new development must follow the Surface Water Design Manual. In this way, all new development must build stormwater infrastructure to control and manage their stormwater. In 2019, City Council amended Title 13 code to add additional stormwater criteria. I'll review those amendments later in this presentation. The city has adopted and requires development to adhere to the 2016 King County Surface Water Design Manual and Addendum, sometimes called the Stormwater Manual, Drainage Manual, or even just the 2016 Manual. All of these names mean the same thing. This is our adopted Stormwater Manual. Whenever I refer to the manual from here on out, this green book is what I'm referring to. The manual is over 1,000 pages in length and is recognized as one of the most comprehensive guides for stormwater design in the nation. It gives engineers and stormwater professionals technical guidance on how to manage and control stormwater from development. The manual prescribes how to analyze and design projects to manage stormwater including right sizing pipes, vaults, and ponds, and how to design water quality treatment facilities, among many other topics. City staff apply the manual to all permits that come into the city. The Sammamish Addendum was adopted at the same time as the 2016 manual. The addendum tailors the 2016 manual to meet the unique conditions within the city. Some examples include using Sammamish-specific forms and reducing the amount of allowed retaining walls in ponds. The addendum also contains area-specific stormwater maps for Sammamish, such as the one shown here, which depicts the landslide hazard and landslide hazard drainage areas in the city. Most of the changes made by the addendum are minor and were driven by aesthetic desires of the community. The addendum does not alter the fundamental design requirements in the 2016 manual. If the city deviated too far from the 2016 manual, we could risk being out of compliance with our NPDES permit or invite legal risk. Federal and state stormwater regulations have required us to adopt the 2016 Surface Water Design Manual. Now we'll discuss the rules within the manual and how they're applied to development projects. I've done my best to condense and generalize very technical, nuanced concepts. For each PowerPoint slide here, there are dozens of pages in the manual that go into much more detail. When a new permit application is submitted to the city, the first step in the Surface Water Design Manual is to start the drainage review process. In the drainage review process, staff review a project's stormwater plan and determine if it meets the stormwater requirements in the manual. For example, they review the stormwater pond design and make sure the engineer has designed it correctly to hold the right amount of stormwater. Staff evaluate the project's drainage review type, which depends on the project's size and location. Staff also review the stormwater core requirements that a project must meet, which is based on the drainage review type. If the developer meets their stormwater requirements, staff can issue a permit. As I said earlier, the size and location of the project determines a project's drainage review type. This chart shows the more common drainage review types in the 2016 Surface Water Design Manual. For brevity, I've excluded some of the less common types. The top drainage review type on this chart, which is no drainage review, has the fewest stormwater requirements. The amount of stormwater requirements increases as projects increase in size and complexity as you go down on this list. I've included some examples of projects for each of the types of drainage review. Most small projects, like small additions or adding a deck, do not require drainage review. Simplified drainage review applies to most new single-family homes. Targeted drainage review is unique and applies to most projects in the city's critical drainage areas. Critical drainage areas are landslide hazard and landslide hazard drainage areas, as well as areas that drain to Pine and Beaver Lake. Even very small projects in these areas must go through targeted drainage review. Full drainage review applies to a project adding 2 or more homes, like many subdivision projects. Large project drainage review applies to master planned communities that propose to add more than 50 acres of impervious surface. This is not applicable to Sammamish. The Surface Water Design Manual also has the 9 core requirements listed here. The core requirements are stormwater design measures a project must meet based on its type of drainage review. The project's drainage review type determines which core requirements it must meet. I've underlined the 4 core requirements that can be the most challenging for applicants to meet. We reviewed 3 of them in our last video: flow control, water quality, and flow control BMPs, and we'll go more into depth on these requirements now. Core Requirement 1 requires projects to direct their stormwater so it leaves the site or discharges at its normal or natural location. An applicant can't direct the water into a different drainage basin or watershed. The purpose of this rule is to keep water flow the same in a drainage basin both before and after development to reduce impact on our surface water features. An additional rule within core requirement number 1 is that projects must build a pipe to carry stormwater from the top of a hill to the bottom, past areas where landslides may occur, as shown in the photo. This is called tight lining. It reduces erosion and landslide risks. Hillsides in Sammamish are landslide hazard areas, and an example of the western edge of the city is shown here. This map was adopted in our Sammamish Addendum. It shows, in orange, the landslide hazard areas. The yellow areas are landslide hazard drainage areas, areas that drain to landslide hazard areas. These maps are approximate guides only. Applicants must analyze their site to see if their property is in a landslide hazard area and manage their stormwater appropriately. Core requirement number 3 is the flow control requirement. From the last stormwater education video, we reviewed that flow control includes peak flow and duration matching. Peak flow matching means that runoff rates from the developed and pre-developed sites must match for various sized storm events. Duration matching means the developed site must match the pre-developed site for the length of time that stormwater leaves the site for various sizes of storm events. To match peak flows and durations, development often must build a stormwater pond or vault to hold water on site and then release it slowly in order to match those peak flows and durations. I'm going to deep dive into the flow control regulations here because this is where Council has indicated they may be interested in making changes to the rules. The 2016 Surface Water Design Manual has 3 levels of flow control: Level 1, or basic, Level 2, or conservation, and Level 3, or flood problem. This map, adopted in the Sammamish Addendum, shows the level of flow control required in each of Sammamish's watersheds, or drainage basins. Flow control levels are determined based on downstream impacts for flooding. As you can see, no areas of Sammamish require Level 1 flow control. Development in brown areas must meet Level 2 flow control. Green areas require Level 3 flow control. The yellow star marks the location of City Hall within Thompson Basin, which drains to Ebright Creek. Development in this drainage basin must meet Level 3 flow control. Level 3 flow control means that a project must hold its extra stormwater on site and release it at the same rate as the historic or forested site for 2-year and 10-year storms. It must match flow rates off the site for the 100-year storm as well, but for existing site conditions rather than forested. The project must also hold back stormwater and release it over the same length of time or duration that the historic site did for various sized storm events, between 50% of the 2-year storm up to the 50-year storm event. Typically, matching historic site conditions results in having to build larger stormwater vaults and ponds compared to matching existing